So today during the worship hour, we left Jesus on the cross. And tonight, we have leapfrogged over John 20 to John 21, which is about him meeting with everybody at the Sea of Galilee. And I appreciated Tim's song about coming and dining. It's kind of hard to go to the Sea of Galilee if we have Jesus still in the tomb. So I thought, well, why don't I read some of the poetry here in this book that the Word became verse, Gospel of John in poetry form that God gave me to share with you. Why don't I read some of chapter 20 for you that will get us from the tomb to the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And then I attended Tim's concert this afternoon at 4 o'clock. And just want to say that I had never met Tim before last night, and whether Tim likes it or not, or knows it or not, I have determined that I'm going to be a lifetime friend of yours. How do you say you love somebody when you've only known them for less than 12 hours? But I just really have a heart for this guy. And anyway, so I was sitting right over there while he was doing the concert, and I was blessed by each song. I was puzzled, though, because it appeared to me that he was playing twice as many keys as are on a keyboard. So I'm not sure how that worked. But when he got to the part where it was the music by request, that especially moved me to just hear the requests come in. And then God gave him a medley and put it together for him, and he put it together and shared it with us, and I was so touched. And I sat over there, moved deeply, and all of a sudden, I thought maybe it was the Holy Spirit whispering to me. And he said basically this: music by request. Why not just ask Tim if he will, in 30 minutes, turn your poetry into a song?
God is not the author of confusion, so he's got this.
He's got this. I had to wait until the crowd stopped shaking his hand and expressing appreciation for how they'd been blessed. And so I'm thinking to myself, the longer I have to wait to spring this request on him, the harder it's going to be, the more pressure. And finally, the last person had kind of slipped away, and I slipped up, and I made the request. He said, "Let me go to my room and fast and pray." Anyway, so I can't tell you how grateful I am. God gave two gifts here. He gave the poetry, and now he's giving the song. So here is John 20 in song.
Early Sunday morning, just before the break of dawn, Mary Magdalene arrived and found the soldiers were all gone. She discovered that the stone and seals had all been rolled away. So she ran to Simon Peter and to John to breathless say, "They have taken the Lord's body, it's no longer in the tomb. He is missing, someone stole him, and the Romans must know whom." In a flash, the two disciples started running for the place, and the one who wasn't Peter was the winner of that race. As he stood there breathing deeply, he chose not to go inside, but peering through the entrance, he saw linens laying by. Just as soon as he arrived there, Peter entered, filled with grief, and he also saw the linens as he stared in disbelief, for the portion of the wrapping that had been around Christ's head wasn't folded with the others, but lay neatly by instead. And who'd ever done the folding placed it over by itself in a spot quite easily noticed near the entrance on a shelf. After Peter went inside, at last the other did so too. And what he saw, he convinced the words of Christ were finally true, though at first they had forgotten what the scriptures plainly said regarding the Messiah who would raise up from the dead. The two disciples left then and returned back to their home. But Mary, who'd come back again, stood weeping all alone. As she wept, she looked inside and saw two white-robed angels there. She hadn't seen them enter, so in wonderment she stared. One sat just beside the head of Christ, where had been put the other angel who was there, was sitting near the foot. The angels gently spoke to her and said, "Why do you cry? You're sobbing uncontrollably. Please tell the reason why." So brokenly she told them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I don't know who took him or the place where he's been stored." After she had said these words, she turned and saw Christ there, though she didn't recognize him, since her eyes were full of tears. "Woman, tell me why you're weeping, who you're looking for," he asked. But she thought him just a gardener out to tend his morning tasks. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken my Lord's body somewhere near, please just show me where you've laid him. I'll take him away from here. For my brother's tomb is empty just outside of Bethany. I could put him there and tend him where he is. I want to be." Then the Savior, with compassion, said her name so tenderly that she knew it must be Jesus, and she fell down at his feet. "Oh, Rabboni," she exclaimed with joy, and to his ankles held. "Don't detain me," he responded. "To my Father I'm compelled to return. I've not ascended, and he's waiting eagerly. We will soon be reunited. I can hardly wait to see. But I have a message for you to be given to my men. Tell them I go to my Father, but I'll see them soon again. And because I was victorious over death and over sin, he is now their Father also, because Satan didn't win." Oh, Mary joyfully left that garden, the first herald to proclaim to the world and his disciples, there is power in his name. "I have seen him," she exulted, "and I've talked with him as well, and he gave to me a message that forever I will tell. He's our Lord and our Redeemer, and the Father loves us too. It's good news, it's the gospel, and I'm telling it to you."
That was the first time he ever sung it. That was the rough draft. That was the rough draft. Oh. Oh.
Test. I guess I'm the non-emotional one of the bunch, so I can carry on at this point. So where's your book? I'll bet I can't read this as well the first time as he sang it. Well, let's do chapter 21. Later, Christ appeared again while walking on a beach of sand. Some of his friends on Galilee had fished all night, but futilely. The group included James and John, while Peter also came along. Thomas, the twin, was there as well, and with him was Nathanael. Two more rounded out the crew, who said to Peter, "We'll come too." They'd fished all night, as I said, but caught no fish and had no bread. At crack of dawn, Christ stood ashore, but who it was they were unsure. He called out, "Boys, what have you caught?" They answered him, "Our work's for naught." "Cast on the right," he said to them. "You'll catch so much you'll sink or swim." They did exactly as he said, while he stayed there on shore baking bread. Then John said, "It's the Lord." I got to get that right. Then John said, "It must be the Lord." And Peter, when he'd heard those words, stripped off his shirt and dove right in and eagerly began to swim. The others stayed on board to haul and found their net completely full. When they reached shore, the waiting cook checked out their catch and fishes took. "We'll add these to the ones right here," he said as they were drawing near. Then Peter helped to drag the net, which, full of fishes, never split. "Now come to breakfast," Jesus said, and served them with his fish and bread. They knew him then, but all refrained to speak out loud his precious name. This was the third time Christ appeared to his disciples gathered here, since that sad Friday when he died on Calvary's cross, the crucified. When they had all eaten their fill, Jesus questioned Peter, "Well, do you love me more, even more, than do these gathered on this shore?" "Yes, Lord," Peter gave reply. "You know I'll love you till I die." "Then feed my lambs," Christ said to him, before repeating the question. "Simon, do you love me true?" Simon said, "You know I do." "Then watch the sheep as well," Christ said. And then, as though his thoughts he read, he asked Peter a third time more as they were standing on that shore, "Simon, do you love me true?" The question hurt him through and through. He said, "Lord, you know everything about my heart, for you're the King. I love you and I always will, far more than words can ever tell." Again Christ said, "So feed my sheep, and then my joy I know you'll keep. But one more thing I have to say. When you were young, you went your way. You did what you would choose to do, and when you're old, they'll carry you." Jesus told him this that he might know just how he'd die when he must go. But Jesus said, "Just follow me. All will be well eventually." Then Peter turned and noticed John, who was behind, tagging along, and Peter said, "What about him? Can you tell me how he will end?" Jesus said, that you cannot know. This future to you I'll not show. If he should live till I return, is not for you to know or learn. I only have one job for you. Just follow me. I'll see you through. Some thought they'd actually heard Christ say one of those men would live always. But he just said, what's that to you? And that not that John would live clear through. That man is me. I wrote this book from records which I faithfully took. I promise all I wrote is true, and there are blessings here for you. He lived with us, Emmanuel. For centuries now, we've tried to tell about his life on earth with men and how one day he'll come again. We've told the stories o'er and o'er, and still we try to tell them more because somehow they don't grow old, these greatest stories ever told. If all he did were written down, a book to hold could not be found, for all the world could not contain the stories told about his name. Still, we write and speak and sing about the Lamb, our coming King. And someday near a sea like fire with angels, we will sing still higher. Worthy, worthy, we will say, is he who stooped to come our way. And at his feet will be cast down by those redeemed, unnumbered crowns. I think that's the first time I've ever done a poetry reading. And it was good. Tonight we want to look at John chapter 21. Let's set the scene. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and in this way he showed himself. Now let's drop down to verse 14 and pick up some context. This is now the third time Jesus showed himself to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. So if we do the chronology here, we know that Jesus told his disciples before he died, meet me at a specific place, a specific time in Galilee. We don't have the specifics, but we know it was specific. He told them, and then the angels reminded, I think it was Mary or the women, to tell him again. And be sure to also tell Peter that he's still invited. So we know that the first time that Jesus showed himself to his disciples, I don't think that includes the road to Emmaus. I think that's when he appeared right after that in the upper room, the night of the resurrection. Thomas wasn't there. He said, I'm not going to believe till I see him, touch him. So a week later, the next Sunday evening, Jesus showed up again. That would be time number 2, and Thomas believed. I believe this has to be the third showing then. So they have headed north to Galilee to keep the appointment on the mountainside where Jesus told them, and they're cooling their heels waiting for that appointment to come. And that is the setting of our story. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee. Who are they? James and John. And 2 others of his disciples were together. So I wonder, where was Andrew? I would think if Andrew would have been there, he would have been mentioned because he's the brother of Peter. But anyway, Simon said to them, I'm going fishing. Notice he didn't say, hey, you guys want to go fishing? He didn't get a consensus from the group. He just said, I'm going fishing. He had all the gear, right? And they said to him, well, we're going with you also. And they went out immediately, got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. Frustrating night fishing. But when the morning had come, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know it was Jesus. So you think about the Galilean shore, early in the morning, probably a mist coming up off the water, maybe a little bit of a fog. They're probably, well, we'll learn, they were about 300 feet offshore, 200 cubits. And so they're far enough away, a football field length away from the shore. And there's a form walking on the shore, but they can't tell who it is. And what do you do when you approach some fishermen? You call to them and you say, did you catch anything, right? My grandma, who was a great fisherwoman, She lived on 15 miles east of Kelso Longview, Washington, out on the Cowieman River. She was the last phone on the road and passed the pavement. And she could take her rod and go out with her night crawlers, and she could walk up to her favorite fishing hole. There could be people all around it who'd caught nothing all day. She could catch her limit and go home, and their mouths were hanging open. But I remember, if she saw somebody, she'd say, "Any luck? Catch anything?" And that's what this form on the shore does in the vernacular of the day. He literally says, "Children, have you any food, or have you any bread?" Which is another way of saying, did you catch anything? Did you get your breakfast caught? And they answered, no. They evidently didn't recognize the voice. They just answered, no, we caught nothing. And now the voice says to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you'll find some. So they cast the net, and now they were not able to draw in because of the multitude of fish. Sound familiar? I believe in this whole story, Jesus is messing with their minds. Because we're going to see there are at least 3 different situations from their past that he stirs memories with what he does. Number 1, all these guys had flopped, right? He said, you'll all forsake me. And they all said, no, we won't. Peter just said it the most vociferously. And they all forsook him. So I can't help but wonder, in that since the resurrection, Jesus has kind of popped in and out. Now you see him, now you don't. He's there for a few minutes, he's gone. He shows up a week later, he's gone. Now, they get this catch of fish. And they have to know it's Jesus. And it's got to stir up memories of when they were called to ministry. We can remind ourselves of the story. Remember, Jesus is in Simon's boat and he preaches, and when he's done with the sermon, he says, launch out into the deep and let's go fishing. And Simon says, Master, we toiled all night and caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I'll let down the net. That's what you call reluctant obedience. Peter essentially says, Lord, I'm a fisherman, you're not, it's daytime, the water's clear, we never catch fish during the day. If we couldn't catch them at night, we're certainly not going to catch them now, and I'm going to look like a complete idiot if I'm going out and putting nets in the water because everybody knows it doesn't work. And all the other fishermen are going to laugh at me. What in the world is he doing? Furthermore, I've been up all night. We've now got our nets all washed and cleaned and mended and in the boat. And if you make me put them back in the water, I'm going to pull them out. There's going to be nothing there because you can't catch fish during the day. And now I'm going to have to clean the nets all over again and dry them out. And I'm not going to get any sleep before I have to go out and go fishing again tonight. Nevertheless, at your word, I'll do it. Reluctant obedience. Remember, they had a little history with Jesus. It seems that up to this time they hung out with Jesus, and then maybe they went back to fishing, and then they hung out with Jesus. But we know they'd seen the water turned into wine. They had seen the temple cleansed. They had seen whatever those other signs were John tells us happened at Passover. They'd seen quite a bit by now. And so Simon says, I'll let down the nets. And when he had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets were breaking. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. They get 2 boatloads full of fish. Then Simon, when he saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, Depart from me. I'm a sinful man, O Lord. Peter was one who talked before he thought. And he just didn't know what to say, but he felt he had to say something. You're too good for me. And of course, how did Jesus respond to that? Follow me, let's go catch some men. Now, compare. That night they caught nothing. Jesus says, cast the net on the right side of the boat. You'll find some. They did it. And instead of 2 boatloads of fish, they got a whole multitude of fish. Later on, we find out in verse 11, 153 large fish. So Jesus is messing with their minds. They're wondering where they stand with Jesus. Jesus reenacts the call by the sea. He uses this to reach into their hearts and grab some emotions and pull them out and renew the call. He takes them right back to the very beginning of their official ministry and reenacts that call. I believe that was hugely significant. The disciple whom Jesus loved, who was that? John. That's in the imperfect tense. It means the disciple that Jesus was loving, kept on loving. John is not saying here, I'm number one, I'm Jesus' favorite. What he's saying is, I'm that young kid who did so many stupid things, but no matter what, Jesus kept on loving me. Take that to heart. The disciples whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it's the Lord, duh. Now when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, as if he hadn't figured that out yet, I'm not sure. Anyway, when John said it's the Lord and Simon heard it, he put on his outer garment, for he had removed it, and plunged into the sea. Peter does not make sense. Put on all your clothes and jump in. It'd be a lot smarter to leave the outer dry in the boat so when you get to land and the boat gets there, you can get on some warm clothes. I mean, I did a baptism today, and I wore a pair of shorts and a T-shirt, and it was really odd walking all the way back to my room in wet clothes. And Peter puts all his clothes on and jumps in the water. They're all going to be wet. But it seems he didn't want to stand naked or in his underwear or whatever we'd want to say before the Lord, as if God doesn't see us naked anyway. But the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far from land, about 200 cubits, that's about 300 feet, dragging the net with fish. Then as soon as they came to the land, they saw a fire of coals on it, and fish on it, and bread. Fish and bread by the sea. There's another set of memories. Jesus coming up with fish and bread by the sea and passing it out. Oh, way back at the 5,000 and at the 4,000, Jesus passed it to them and they passed it to the people. Now Jesus, he comes up with fish and bread all by himself. But he says, bring some of the fish that you've just caught. So Simon Peter went out and dragged the net to land full of large fish, 153. I like that. I count things. I count things all the time. I would have counted the fish. And although there were so many, the net was not broken. How heavy would a net be with 153 large fish? I mean, if they're all 1-pounders, that's 153 pounds. And those are not large fish. At least the last time I heard, a 1 pounder is not really a large fish. 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, we're getting up into hundreds of pounds. And you get the feeling, little John, trying to tug that thing to shore, and Peter goes out, boom, he pulls it in. Peter's the big guy. Then Jesus said, "Come and eat breakfast." Yet none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" knowing that it was the Lord. I don't know what to do with that verse except to say it must have had a certain level of awkwardness. As if they want to pepper Jesus with questions, and yet it doesn't seem appropriate to do so. Then Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and likewise the fish. Doesn't that sound like the feeding of the 5,000? He broke the loaves and gave it to them, and likewise the fish. He's messing with their minds. He's taking them back. He's rooting them in where they've been. He's kind of spanning back over their denials and their abandoning him back to significant events in their time together, trying to bridge that downtime and bring them into the present. And when they'd eaten breakfast, let's talk about that for a minute. Jesus needed to have a serious talk with these guys, didn't he? I mean, if I had a church with a staff of 12, one of them defected and the others all wimped out, I'd either need to get a new staff or I'd need to have a come to Jesus talk with them, right? They need to shape up or ship out. We've got work to do. And if you're just going to run away, we're not going to be very good battling for the Lord. Are you with me or not? And you can see Jesus, he could have done it. He could have had a boardroom meeting. Sat them all down around a table and said, "Now guys, are you in or not?" And laid down the law. And it would have been tense. It would have been awkward. The guys would tend to become defensive, right? What does Jesus do? He takes them all out to breakfast. He knows guys. He knows gals too, but he knows guys. Feed us a good breakfast. Don't worry too much about the presentation. Just make sure there's plenty of good food. When my wife does a women's prayer breakfast at our church, I have to spend a whole lot of time, along with others. We string little lights across the top of the gym, and, we do all, put cloths on the tables. You got to have centerpieces, and it's a lot of work to get the presentation right. Now, when we do a men's breakfast, we cook a whole bunch of food. We spread it out on the counter. We set up some tables and chairs, and it's gone. And there's absolutely no presentation at all. Jesus calls them around the fire, and he feeds them breakfast. I've had a lot of difficult conversations that I didn't want to have to face just sitting staring across at another person, and when I said, "Let's do lunch." Right? Let's go have a meal together and talk. And over the meal, somehow there's a little less intensity, and you're able to deal with things that would be far less comfortable in a head-on setting. I like that. Jesus fixes them breakfast, and you have these guys. They've been fishing all night. They're not the cleanest guys in town, right? They haven't showered. Their clothes are probably a little bit soiled, but they're around the breakfast, around the fire, around having breakfast, and they're with Jesus. And I just like the fact that Jesus, instead of lecturing them, he sets up the stirring of memories. He's messing with their minds and their hearts. Where's Peter during all of this? I just want to suggest something. The guy is soaking wet. It's early morning. It's probably a little bit cool in all that wet clothes. So where's Peter probably at? He's rotating by the fire, right? Getting the back side, getting the front side, and the left side. You know, he's trying to dry out. He's trying to get warm. He's rotating by the fire. He's rotating by the fire. And Jesus looks at Peter sometime after the meal. We don't know the rest of the conversation. I'm sure there was tons of it. They didn't all just stand around silent and eat. But we get this part. Jesus, all of a sudden, says to Simon, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? Excuse me, my phone just decided to play a song. Jesus looks at Simon and he said, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? I would like to believe that question came out of the blue. Just all of a sudden, while Peter's rotating by the fire, Jesus says, say, Simon, do you love me more than these? Now, I read that and I say, more than what? What is these? And so I dive into the Greek because you know that these is the demonstrative pronoun that will match in gender and number, whatever it's referring back to. And I discover it can refer back to the fish, the fishing stuff, or that. Do you love me more than fishing? It can refer back to the other disciples. Do you love me more than you love these guys? And I've had people look at me strange like, no, it's obvious what it means, and it wasn't obvious to me. I think Lee had to tell me twice or three times. Jesus, I believe, is asking Peter, do you love me more than these disciples love me? And this is why I believe that. Remember when Jesus said, you're all going to forsake me? Peter said, not me. I'm ready to go to prison and to death with you. Right? Boastful claims. I'll lay down my life for your sake. And he also said, even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble. Jesus, I love you more than they do. I will be more loyal than they could ever be. I will be more faithful than they could be. He puts the whole bunch of them down as lesser in loyalty and fidelity to Jesus than himself. And then he's the one who flops the most spectacularly. That's the reason I believe when Jesus says, do you love me more than these? He's taken Peter back to his boasts. Do you love me more than these others disciples love me? Like you claimed back there? He's messing with his mind. He's taking him back in memories. Peter, is he going to say, oh yeah. I had a little failing there. No. Peter seems to ignore that part of the question. He's not ready to be boastful this time. He simply says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Now, did Jesus ask it again immediately? Was this like boom, boom, boom? Or did he let some time go by? We don't know, but this is what I think. As Peter continues to rotate by the fire, and conversation goes on, and it slips from the mind. You know, that was a strange question, but you kind of forget about it a few minutes. All of a sudden, Jesus says again, Simon, by the way, son of Jonah, do you love me? Oops, we need to go down to the next one. Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He doesn't say more than these this time. And Peter goes, well, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus says, tend my sheep. By the way, the previous time, I missed that. He said, feed my lambs. By the way, if you tell someone to tend your sheep or feed your lambs, what are you saying? You're still on the team. You're still hired. You're not fired. You're not going to be replaced. Go back to work. Peter has to be wondering after his flop if he still has a place on the team. Jesus says yes. And then he says it again a second time. And I'd like to believe some more time goes by and Peter's rotating by the fire. When Jesus says a third time, out of the blue, after it slipped from his mind, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Now Peter is grieved because he has said to him the third time, do you love me? He said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. Now, I believe Jesus is pulling another heartstring on Peter. Because remember, when Peter walked into the courtyard, if you go with the Gospel of John, when Peter walked into the courtyard, John was already inside. He got the servant girl to open the gate. And as he goes by the servant girl says, you're not one of those disciples of his, are you? And it's grammatically to assume a no answer. You're not one of them, are you? And Peter just says no. He doesn't think about it. He doesn't probably even register what he says. He gives the expected answer and moves on in. And where does he go to? He goes by the fire. It's a chilly evening. And he starts rotating by the fire. And then somebody else by the fire says again, you're not one of them, are you? Expecting a no answer. And he pops off with another no answer. I still don't think it's registered what happened. The two times are disconnected. He keeps rotating by the fire until somebody else says, you are too one of those disciples. And I don't remember right now whether that's the one that said, I saw you in the garden, or the one that said your accent betrays you. But he says, you got to be one of them. And that's when Peter begins to use oaths and curses to say, I don't even know this man. And Luke tells us evidently Jesus must have been on an open balcony because he hears it. He looks. Peter and Jesus' eyes lock. Peter all of a sudden realizes his flop. He breaks down and rushes away. I think it's significant that now Peter's rotating by the fire and Jesus just recreates the scene in the courtyard. And he reaches in and he grabs Peter's heart and he just pulls him in. And he lets him undo all three denials. And I don't think it was until the whole thing was done that Peter caught what was going on. How Jesus even reenacted significantly the courtyard experience where he's standing by the fire and he gets caught twice without realizing what he's done, and then the third one comes down. And now he doesn't understand what Jesus is doing until the third one comes down. And then it's like, oh. But Jesus says, feed my sheep. 3 times Peter gets to undo his denials. And 3 times Jesus said, you're still on the team. You're not fired. Go back to work. Like I said, he's messing with his mind. Then Jesus says, assuredly I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish. This he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, follow me. Would you like Jesus to tell you how you're going to die? I am absolutely not interested in knowing that. Are you? You know, if I'm going to die of some disease or persecution's going to break out and I'm going to get tortured and killed, I don't want to know that. So why does Jesus tell Peter that? For the rest of Peter's life, he knows something about how he's going to die. He is going to get a chance to go to prison and death for the Lord, because that seems to imply they're going to stretch out your hands. That seems to imply he's going to be crucified. And of course, tradition at least tells us he was crucified in Rome and chose to be crucified upside down because he didn't feel he was worthy to die the same as his Lord. But why did Jesus tell him this? And this is the coup de grace of the whole scene. What is Jesus saying? Peter, you said you'd go to prison and death for me. You said you'd die for me. You said you'd never forsake me. And you completely flopped and failed. But Peter, you follow me. You're my man. I still believe in you. You're still on the team. You're going to have a chance to fulfill those promises. And I'm telling you right now, you will stand. You're my man. You have what it takes. Go for it. And Jesus just builds him up. Isn't that amazing? So, this is the message that Jesus gives to his heart and to the disciples. He floods them with memories, the catch by the sea, the fish and the bread by the sea, the night's betrayal with Peter rotating by the fire. And in the hearing of the other 6 disciples, he lets Peter leave behind the boast of loving Jesus more than the others. He lets Peter reverse all 3 denials for his own heart's sake. He reinstates Peter into his own confidence. I trust you with my work, and thus into the confidence of the other disciples. After Peter's most spectacular implosion and fall, he had forfeited the trust of the other disciples. Jesus now let him humble himself before them, regain their trust based on Jesus' trust in him. Jesus reinstates Peter into the team. Jesus recalls Peter to ministry 3 times. Feed my sheep, tend my lambs. Jesus reinstates Peter into leadership. You're still my man. He's still my man. He's still a leader. And Peter, you're going to have a chance to fulfill those promises you made so boastfully. You will stand for me. Follow me. Have you ever felt like Peter? Have you ever imploded, lightly or greatly? Jesus speaks to your heart and my heart with this same message. He looks at us tonight and he says, forget your past failures and flops. Press on into the future. You're still my man. You're still my woman. You're still on my team. I believe in you, my beloved son and daughter. Feed my sheep. Tend my lambs, and you too will stand for me to the end if you just follow me day by day.
I heard a song at 4 o'clock about the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And that sounds like what Gary was just talking about. I'm just going to make a few closing comments, but before I do, even though the timing is sort of awkward, I just want to do a little timeout for just a second. And I want to say how much I have appreciated partnering with Gary and Marilynn. We got to do this at Northern California Campmeeting last year, and to do it again now has just been a joy to me, and I am just so grateful that God and the Arizona Conference decided to give us a chance to do it. I want to thank the staff of the Arizona Conference who have done so much to accommodate and to help and to make what we're doing successful by God's grace. I want to thank you for loving Jesus so much and for coming by and telling us you love him too, and that you're blessed when we look together in his direction. So I just want to say those things and express my appreciation. Now, when they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Just a few thoughts that are a little different than the ones that Gary shared, and which I appreciated so much. Because quite frankly, I feel like a flop and a failure far too often. And I think to myself, how does he keep putting up with me? Why doesn't he just say, Lee, really? You're still not potty trained? I can still remember I had a really bad week spiritually one time. This is several years ago. Not that I don't still have them, but I'm just thinking about something that happened several years ago. And it came down to Friday, and I felt so much like a flop and a failure as a Christian that I just thought, I'm supposed to preach tomorrow, and I feel like I want to run away from church. The last thing in the world I want to do is go. And I was so discouraged with my flops and failures that Friday night came, and I didn't even pray. I just went to bed. I didn't pray because I didn't feel like I could even face him. And then I couldn't call in sick on Sabbath morning. And I wake up Sabbath morning and I'm still feeling like, I don't want to go over there. How can I go over there and talk about him when I've just failed him? On the tail of my failure. So I went in and took a shower. And as I was in the shower, I started praying, something I had been avoiding. And as I was praying, I started crying. And it's safe to cry in showers because the water and the tears kind of get, blended together. And I'll never forget, I was crying and I said, Lord, I don't know why you don't just give up on me. And instantly, a secular song popped into my head. And these were the words. Because I can't stop loving you. I've made up my mind. Yes, I have. And I thought, really? Lord, Elvis Presley? But what a Savior. That's what Gary was trying to remind us over and over and over again here, is that he doesn't look at us as flops and failures. He says, hey, I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. Let's eat. That's why I love Tim's song, Come and Dine. Come and dine. Let's eat. Jesus gives the invitation in John 21:12, come and dine. What do we do when we go out to eat with friends? We go out to eat with friends so we can enjoy fellowship, enjoy time together, enjoy communing at the table. The table is an excuse for communing and fellowshipping. And many a time we'll go to a restaurant and we will finish our food and sit around the table and talk until the wait staff comes and says, we have other people waiting in line for a seat. Would you mind? Maybe could you finish your conversation somewhere else? Jesus says, come and dine. What's he saying? Let's hang out. Let's have communion. Let's have fellowship. Isn't it wonderful that he is interested in communing with faulty followers? Isn't it wonderful that he knocks on our heart's door in spite of our flops and our failures? He has breakfast with people who have doubted and denied and disbelieved and forsaken him. And he still does. Now, where did the fire and the fish and the bread come from? Have you ever wondered about that? Jesus prepared the feast, and he brought it with him, apparently. How good of him to provide the food. And it reminds me of Abraham saying to Isaac, when Isaac said, as they were climbing the mountain, Father, we have wood, we have fire. Where's the lamb? And Abraham said to Isaac, my son, God himself will provide the lamb. Or God will provide himself the lamb. And Jesus says, I am the manna. I'd like to serve dinner or breakfast, and I will provide myself the bread. So John 21:13, I think I've been forgetting that I should be going forward. Oh, there it is. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and he did the same with the fish. He's been back to heaven. He's been adored by angels. He's been welcomed by unfallen worlds. And what does he do now? This is the king of the universe. He's been acknowledged. He's been reinstated, so to speak. You can just try to imagine the celebration. Probably the entire New Jerusalem is in full dress decoration, I mean, he's talking about how women like to do presentation with the lights and stuff. City of New Jerusalem is probably, the father of lights. It's one of the words he's given, descriptions he's given in James. The father of lights has probably got the city decked out. And Jesus comes back from the celebration. And what does he do? Unfallen worlds have been bowing. Anthems have been being sung. Choirs have been one after another singing his praise. The Father, remember when Jesus told the story of the prodigal son and the father running to meet him? Have you ever thought about the connection and the similarity? When Jesus would talk, I have a hunch that the Father was listening in on that parable, or that story. When Jesus told the story, Father's like up there kind of going. And maybe Gabriel come and said, Father God, they're going to serve, dinner, and we just want to know if you want us to set the table for you. And he's going, Gabe, man, no, my son's talking right now. Don't want to miss this. Now, what was Jesus doing? So he said, while the sun was yet a long way off, would you call earth to heaven a long way off? I would. The sun's a long way off, and he says the Father rushes to meet him. Who do you think Jesus is thinking about right now? And here's some more. So then he says, and what does the Father say? This is my son who was lost for your sake and for my sake. Reading between the lines here, aren't you? He was dead. Oh, how obvious is that? And he's alive again. Kill the fatted calf, bring the robe, bring the signet, bring the sandals. We are going to celebrate. Jesus is anticipating heaven. So he's been there, and they've been adoring him, and he comes back and serves breakfast to a bunch of losers. Isn't that incredible? Incredible. And when he finally brings us home to his Father's house, and the grandest feast ever given is laid out beside the sea of glass, he's still going to be serving the meal. Isn't that amazing? He's still going to be serving the meal. And where's the Father going to be in this? He's going to be coming along with a linen towel. And he's going to say, let me dry those tears. He won't have to do it for Gary, though. I loved your line. That was just a great line. Now, I just want you to note something else. John 21:14. This is now the third time that Jesus has showed himself to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. What did he show? He showed himself. Now, doesn't that language sound familiar? John 21:1. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. And in this way, he showed himself. Luke 24:27, the two on the road to Emmaus. Jesus shows up. You know the story. They're just depressed. And then it says, beginning with Moses and throughout all the prophets, he, that's Jesus, went on explaining and interpreting to them in all the scriptures the things concerning what? Himself. Tomorrow morning and Monday morning and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday morning, get up earlier than maybe you're accustomed to, and open up the Gospel of John or something on the life of Christ, and say to him, Lord Jesus, I remember you said, come and dine. I've come to the table. Would you please show me yourself in what I'm reading? Show me yourself. Cause my heart to burn within me. That is the object and the goal of the devotional life. It is to meet Jesus daily. It is to know him. Whom to know is life eternal. And so the question comes to you and to me, are we eating breakfast daily? Far too sad truth is that the majority of church members just eat once a week. If you tried to live physically on one meal a week. So are we eating breakfast daily? If you will seek the Lord and be converted every day, all your murmurings will be stilled. All your difficulties will be removed. All the perplexing problems that now confront you will be solved. That's a pretty good trade for time with Jesus. In the very first chapter of the book of John, as we started, Jesus had said to Andrew and John, come and see. They said to him, where do you hang out? He said, come and see. Come spend the day with me. This morning by the lake, he says to them, come and dine. And years later, as John is writing the last book of the Bible, he comes to the close with a similar invitation, and it's found in Revelation 21. The Spirit and the bride say, come. And let him who hears say, come. And whoever is thirsty, let him come. Whoever wishes, let him take the free gift of the water of life. That would be Jesus. And I inserted, parenthetically, and the bread of life. Jesus still serves breakfast every morning. Are you interested? Because if you are, you can have camp meeting every day until he comes again.
you've invited each one of us to come and see. Jesus, I wonder, have we let you come down from your framed portraits and your colorful posters and stained glass graves where we've held you? Have we let you come down and be beside us? Come and live in us through your Spirit? I wonder, was it tonight? Will it be tonight? Will we remember who you are? And will we embrace our destiny? I wonder, Jesus. Thank you for inviting us to come and see. We accept. We accept, Jesus. Do I have any friends in on that? He's invited us to come and see. Are you in on it? Then I want to remind you of your destiny. Could you turn my monitors down just a little bit up here? I dream of a place where people just like you and me can learn to live in perfect harmony, where the grass always grows Please don't leave tonight without saying goodbye.